Owen saw his own name at the bottom of a loan application and knew immediately he had never signed it. Not because he remembered every signature he had ever written. Nobody does. It was something smaller than that. Something instinctive. The O leaned left. His always leaned slightly right. The tail on the W stopped too early, cut short the way someone ends a letter when their hand hesitates. It was his name written by someone who had studied him carefully. Someone close enough to practice. The document authorized a $40,000 home equity line of credit against the house where he slept every night beside the woman whose handwriting he was now staring at. Across the desk, the banker waited. Dale, late 50s, calm voice, University of North Carolina mug. The kind of man who had delivered bad news often enough to know silence usually worked better than explanations. The office was too quiet. A wall clock ticked with mechanical indifference. Each second sounded louder than it should have. Owen had come in that morning to finance a second work vehicle for his home inspection company. Routine paperwork, 30 minutes, sign and leave. Instead, his usual loan officer, Priya, had pulled his credit report, frowned slightly, then turned the screen toward him. His score had dropped 162 points. 2 accounts he had never opened, a retail card, and a line of credit that had already been drained, using a signature that looked almost like his. Almost. He had been sitting in Dale's office for 20 minutes now. The loan application lay between them beside a canceled check Owen had pulled from his truck to compare signatures. Dale had studied both quietly, then given a slow, confirming nod. The kind doctors give when tests confirm what symptoms already suggested. Owen finally set the paper down. He pressed his palms flat against the desk. A habit. The same way he steadied himself before telling homeowners their foundation had shifted or termites had eaten through support beams. Pause first, then calculate damage. Is there any way, Owen asked carefully, to handle this without involving police? Dale didn't answer immediately. That told Owen everything. I understand why you're asking, he said finally, but for a forged instrument of this size, bank policy requires a police report before we can even start a fraud dispute. A small pause. Without that report, the $41,600 stays legally yours. Another pause. There really isn't another path. Owen nodded once. Not dramatically, just acknowledgement. He thanked Dale, shook his hand, walked out to his van, sat in the driver's seat, and didn't start the engine. He was 34. He co-owned a home inspection company with his best friend Russ. What started as 1 truck and a borrowed ladder had grown into 6 inspectors covering Wake, Durham, and Orange counties. He had been married to Megan 4 years, together 6. She was a dental hygienist near downtown Raleigh, good at her work, gentle with nervous patients. She laughed in restaurants in a way that made nearby tables turn and smile without knowing why. Lately, she kept her phone closer, cried in the bathroom some nights around midnight, said it was just work stress, and apparently she had also been draining their savings for 18 months, and forging his name, and risking his credit, and possibly risking the business Russ depended on. Owen didn't know the full number yet. His accountant would later calculate $68,400. Right now, he only knew 3 things: the wrong angle of the O, the short tail of the W, and the cold understanding spreading slowly through his chest that the person he trusted most had been performing a version of him on paper while performing a version of herself every evening in their kitchen, asking about his day, pouring wine, falling asleep with her feet tucked under his leg on the couch. He sat in the van nearly an hour. Then he did what he always did when something in a building didn't make sense. He didn't panic. He didn't confront. He opened a new file in his head and started documenting. That evening, Megan was making pasta when he got home. Garlic and olive oil in the air, music playing softly from her phone. "How'd the loan go?" she asked. He put his keys down. "They need more paperwork," he said. "Some kind of review hold, probably next week." She made a face. "That's annoying." She handed him a glass of water, kissed his jaw. He stood there holding the glass, thinking about how many times she might have practiced that signature, wondering if she used scrap paper or grocery receipts. He didn't sleep that night. He lay beside her, listening to her breathe evenly, and thought about his father, a man who had forgiven Owen's mother 3 separate major lies over 30 years because he feared loneliness more than betrayal. Owen had watched that forgiveness slowly shrink him, year by year. until the man at the dinner table barely resembled the one in their wedding photos. At 19, Owen promised himself he would never become that man. Now he lay in the dark doing math. If the debt stayed, the business loan could collapse. If the business collapsed, Russ lost everything too. The numbers didn't land in Megan's favor. The next morning, he called a forensic accountant named Deborah. $300 an hour, worth every cent. Over 3 weeks, she would reconstruct the story transfer by transfer. Owen expected gambling, maybe drugs, maybe another man. It was none of those. What she found was worse, because it was something he could almost understand. And that almost would keep him awake for months. 3 months before the courthouse, on a cold December evening when half the neighborhood still had Christmas lights glowing in their windows, Owen came home early from an inspection in Durham and sat down at the kitchen table with a manila folder and a yellow legal pad filled with numbers. Megan wasn't home yet. He checked the time. 2 hours, maybe 3. Enough. He laid everything out with the same methodical care he used when mapping structural damage. Bank statements, 18 months. The HELOC application with his forged signature circled in red. A spreadsheet Deborah had built showing every transfer. Dates, amounts, patterns. Small at first, 200, 300, 500, then 4 digits, then the line of credit, the one that changed everything. He placed the folder in the center of the table and rested his hands on either side of it, like a man bracing himself on a moving boat. At 7:40, the front door opened. Megan stepped in wearing her scrubs, carrying takeout from the Thai place on Glenwood. She saw his face before she saw the folder. Something in her posture changed immediately. The plastic bag tightened in her grip. Containers shifted. A thin line of brown sauce leaked down the side onto her wrist. She didn't wipe it off. Owen had rehearsed this moment for days. In the truck, in the shower, crawling under houses. He had prepared for denial, for anger, for deflection, for her ability, which she absolutely had, to turn a question into an accusation against him. He was ready for that version. What he was not ready for was Megan quietly pulling out her phone, scrolling, her hands shaking, then turning the screen toward him. The photo showed a little girl sitting on a worn kitchen floor beneath water-stained ceiling tiles, eating cereal from a metal mixing bowl, no clean dishes. She almost lost her, Megan said. Her voice broke on the word lost. He was 3 months behind on rent. The court gave him 60 days to prove stable housing, or they start custody removal. She swallowed hard. I couldn't just watch that happen, Owen. A pause. I couldn't watch a 4-year-old lose her father because I walked away when he needed help. Owen studied the photo. Dark hair and uneven pigtails. The kind a tired father ties without enough practice. The girl was smiling at whoever held the camera. Trusting. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. The folder was still there. The numbers hadn't changed, and the signature was still not his. I understand why you wanted to help, he said quietly. And I do understand. A breath. But you forged my name on a legal document. His voice stayed calm. That almost made it worse. You took $40,000 against our house without telling me. My credit score dropped 160 points. I almost lost a business loan. Russ almost lost his truck lease because our business ties to my credit. Another pause. I can't understand that part away. Megan's eyes filled immediately. She stepped closer. Please don't file the report. Her fingers gripped his arm hard enough to leave pressure marks. Not anger, panic. I'll pay everything back. I'll sell my car. I'll take double shifts. Whatever it takes. Owen didn't pull his arm away. But he didn't return the grip either. The bank requires a police report to even start removing the HELOC from my name. His voice stayed steady. I'm not punishing you. A small breath. I'm trying to survive this. That was the moment she understood. Not emotionally, practically. She nodded slowly, then went to the bedroom. Owen sat on the bed while she packed. One bag for clothes, one for toiletries, drawers opening, zippers closing, ordinary sounds. That was the worst part. No screaming, no breaking, just logistics. She left her house key on the kitchen counter beside the evidence folder. The front door closed quietly, quieter than a slam. Her headlights swept across the bedroom ceiling as she backed out toward her mother's house in Garner. Owen stayed seated a long time. Eventually, he picked up his phone and called Russ. Not to talk about Megan, not about fraud, not about the police report he knew he had to file. He asked about Thursday's inspection schedule, foundation access points, permit timing, anything measurable, anything with right angles. Russ listened for 10 minutes while Owen talked about load paths and moisture readings. Finally, Russ said softly, "Brother, you sound like hell." Owen stared at the wall. "I know." Then he kept talking about structural walls. Deborah's office sat on the second floor of an older brick building on Hillsborough Street. The hallway smelled faintly of printer toner and burnt coffee, the universal scent of people who spent their lives reconstructing other people's mistakes. She was in her 50s, reading glasses on a chain. No wasted movements. The kind of focus that made Owen feel like his entire financial life was a puzzle she intended to solve before lunch. He had given her everything. Bank statements, tax returns, login access, HELOC documents, total transparency. She told him a week. She called in 4 days. When Owen arrived, she already had the documents spread across her desk in clean, precise stacks. Tabs, highlights, notes in the margins, methodical damage assessment, just like his work. 18 months, she said. No buildup, no drama, just fact. 18 months of transfers from your joint savings account to a Venmo account belonging to someone named C. Whitfield. She slid the first page toward him. $200, $300, $500, small enough to disappear inside normal spending noise, groceries, gas, subscriptions. Owen never remembered to cancel. Trust makes small numbers invisible. Over 6 months, $8,000. Easy to miss if you believed the person managing the account was protecting it. Owen had believed that completely, because giving Megan control of their savings had felt like intimacy, not risk. Then the pattern changed. $1,500, $2,000, $2,400. Deborah turned her laptop toward him. I cross-referenced the larger transfers with public court filings. She tapped the screen. Each spike aligned within days of custody review hearings for a minor child in Durham County. Someone was keeping Caleb Whitfield financially stable just enough to avoid losing custody, housing, legal representation, basic stability. When savings thinned, the transfers didn't stop. They just found a new source. Owen already knew what she meant. How much total? He asked. Deborah didn't soften it. She rotated the screen. $68,400. He read it twice. Felt nothing. That scared him more than the number. The same week, Russ called about a new contract. A developer converting 4 old tobacco warehouses in East Durham into loft apartments needed full structural inspections before permits would be approved. Their biggest job yet. Owen couldn't refuse. He also couldn't focus. For 3 days, he crawled beneath warehouse foundations with a flashlight and moisture probe, mapping cracks in buildings owned by strangers, while Deborah mapped fractures in his own life. On Wednesday evening, he pulled himself out from under Building C covered in red Carolina clay. His phone showed one voicemail. Deborah. Call me when you can. I found something on the HELOC application trail. Her tone wasn't alarmed, which somehow made it worse. He drove to her office first thing the next morning. Deborah had another file ready. I pulled IP logs from the HELOC submission. She slid a printed sheet toward him. The application wasn't submitted from your home network. Owen frowned. Where then? She pointed. Garner, North Carolina. Different address. He didn't recognize it. Deborah did. I ran the address through property records. A small pause. It belongs to Diane Holloway. Owen didn't react at first. Sometimes information lands slower than impact. Megan's mother, Deborah said gently. Silence filled the room. Deborah continued carefully. This suggests Megan didn't submit the application from home where you might notice. She drove somewhere else. Owen pictured it instantly. Her car in Diane's driveway, laptop open, practicing his signature. His stomach tightened. Does that mean her mother knew? He asked. Deborah shook her head slightly. It means she was physically present. Knowledge is a legal question. Owen nodded slowly. He remembered phone calls Megan had taken in the garage. Door closed, voice low. Christmas afternoon. Mom, I know the numbers. I'll figure it out. That sentence sounded different now. He stepped outside and called his lawyer from the parking lot. If I can prove her mother knew, Owen asked, what does that change? His lawyer answered immediately. Leverage. A short pause. Significant leverage in debt allocation. Owen watched a woman across the street walking a golden retriever past bare crepe myrtle trees waiting for spring. Using Diana's legal pressure sounded clean in his lawyer's voice. Strategic, efficient. It felt different sitting in his chest. He thought about Thanksgiving dinners, birthday cards with $20 bills, being called honey. Then he thought about $68,400. Russ's truck lease, 6 employees, years of work. He exhaled slowly. "Prepare the filing," he said. He ended the call, sat in the van, engine off, then drove back to the Whitfield warehouse project. Building D still needed east wall measurements. Permits were due Monday. Foundations don't pause because your life collapses. That was the strange comfort Owen kept returning to. Buildings didn't lie, they didn't pretend, they didn't promise. They just stood there with their cracks and stress loads and honest structural failures waiting for someone to crawl underneath and tell the truth about what was holding them up. A year before the bank, before the spreadsheets, before the forensic accountant, before Owen learned to recognize his own name written by someone else. They were fine, not the kind of fine people say when something is already breaking. Actually fine. They had settled into the house on Millbrook Road the way most couples do after a few years together. The early electricity had faded into something quieter, more structural, coffee routines, commute routines, quiet negotiations about whose turn it was to call the plumber about the slow leak Owen kept insisting he would fix himself. He never did. Owen was growing the business. 2 inspections a week had become 4, then 6. They hired a part-time office manager named Cheryl who organized invoices and reminded both him and Russ to eat lunch. Megan had moved from a dental office in Cary to a better clinic, closer to downtown Raleigh. Better pay, better hours. She seemed lighter when she came home, or maybe just less tired. Owen had learned those were often the same thing. The first change was so small he barely registered it. The phone. Megan had always been casual with it. Kitchen counter, bathroom shelf, couch arm. Sometime around August, it started staying closer. Not hidden, just migrating. From counter to pocket, from table to purse. A small gravitational shift. Owen noticed it the way you notice a new sound in an old house. You hear it, you log it mentally. Then you decide it's nothing because the alternative requires energy you don't want to spend. In September, he found the receipt. Toy store on Hillsborough Street. 1 stuffed rabbit, $14. He held it between his fingers trying to think of anyone in their lives with a child young enough for a stuffed animal. That night he mentioned it casually over dinner. Not suspicion, just conversation. "Megan, who'd you buy the rabbit for?" She didn't hesitate. "Amy at the clinic is pregnant, baby shower coming." Owen nodded. "That's nice." He passed her the rice. The receipt went into the trash with the takeout containers. He forgot about it completely. He would not think about that receipt again for 11 months. And when he did, he would be standing in a very different kitchen, with a very different understanding. October brought the first withdrawal he could have caught. $1,500. Megan told him she had put a deposit on an Asheville cabin for their December anniversary. She showed him the listing. Stone fireplace, Blue Ridge mountain view. Owen kissed her forehead. "Looks perfect." The cabin existed, the reservation did not. Megan had found the listing, screenshot it, never booked anything. The money went to Caleb. 2 weeks before a custody review. His apartment needed working heat. There was a version of Owen who might have caught this, the version who tracked household finances like business accounts. But 3 years earlier, Megan had asked to manage the savings, and trusting her with money had felt identical to trusting her with everything else. He checked business accounts daily. He had not logged into joint savings since spring. November brought the tears. Not dramatic, not confrontational. Just quiet tears that appeared and disappeared quickly, like passing rain. One night around midnight, he found her sitting on the edge of the bathtub, face in her hands. He knelt beside her. "What's wrong?" She wiped her eyes quickly. Smiled the way people smile when they want questions to stop. "Hard day at the clinic." A patient reacted badly. "Nothing serious." Owen rubbed her back, walked her to bed, lay beside her listening to her breathing slow, waiting for sleep. When it came, he felt useful, like he had fixed something. That was the feeling he trusted most in the world, and the one misleading him most. He didn't know that 2 hours earlier, Megan had been sitting in her car in the Harris Teeter parking lot on Six Forks Road, engine running, heat on, Phone glowing in the dark. A text from Caleb. A photo attached. Lily in a new winter coat Megan had paid for. Standing on apartment steps Megan was helping keep. The girl held up a crayon drawing. A crooked house. Smoke from the chimney. 3 figures. 2 big, 1 small. Underneath in uneven letters, "Thank you, Taita Meg." Megan saved the photo, opened the banking app, looked at the savings balance, looked back at the drawing, transferred $1,200, 2 months of rent. Her thumb hovered over confirm longer than usual, then pressed. She placed the phone face down, sat there until the windows fogged, until she couldn't see the grocery store lights anymore. She told herself what she had been telling herself for months. She would pay it back. Owen made good money. The business was growing. The account would recover before he noticed. This wasn't stealing, it was their money. And she was protecting a child. A child connected to mistakes she had made years earlier when she left Caleb during his worst collapse and chose a better life. This wasn't charity. It wasn't generosity. It was guilt. A debt she believed she owed. And she would keep paying until it felt balanced. It never did. December arrived. Owen surprised her with a real Asheville trip he had booked himself. Different cabin. Real reservation. She opened the confirmation email Christmas morning. Her face did something complicated. Gratitude, fear, relief, all at once. She hugged him longer than usual. Owen thought it was love. That afternoon, Diane called. Megan took the call into the garage. Owen heard fragments through the door. Low voice, urgent. "Mom, I know the numbers. I'll figure it out." When she came back, he asked if everything was okay. "Property taxes," she said. Owen handed her wine. They watched a movie. He fell asleep with her feet tucked under his leg. His last thought before sleep. This is enough. This ordinary life. I'm lucky. 18 months before everything collapsed, on a clear Saturday morning in early September when the air had just started to lose its summer heaviness, Owen and Megan drove to the State Farmers Market on Lake Wheeler Road. This was one of their rituals, not something they had ever formally planned, just something that became theirs. Every other Saturday if the weather held. Owen liked the produce stand run by the old farmer from Wendell, who grew tomatoes that actually tasted like tomatoes. Megan liked the honey vendor, and the woman selling lavender soap wrapped in brown paper. They walked slowly between the rows with coffee from the entrance stand, bumping shoulders, talking about nothing important. They always bought more vegetables than they used. Half would soften in the fridge. Owen loved that kind of ordinary waste. It meant life was stable enough to be imperfect. They were near the back row past the flower stalls when Megan suddenly stopped walking. Her hand froze halfway to her mouth. Her entire body went still. Not fear exactly. Recognition. Owen followed her gaze. A man sat on a bench near the exit, mid-30s, needed a haircut. Flannel shirt with a torn pocket he either hadn't noticed or couldn't afford to fix. He leaned forward, watching a small girl move carefully between flower buckets. Dark hair and uneven pigtails. Rubber bands instead of real hair ties. Maybe 3 years old. She touched each flower carefully with one finger, petal by petal, as if counting them. Owen glanced at Megan. Her face had changed. Not sadness. Something closer to memory. The expression people get when they drive past a house they once lived in and see someone else has stopped caring for the yard. "That's Caleb," she said quietly. "From before." Owen knew the name. Early in their relationship, Megan had mentioned him carefully, a relationship from her early 20s. Ended badly. She left. He struggled afterward. She had said she regretted how it ended. Not that it ended. Owen understood. He had his own version of that story. A girl in Wilmington he still thought about sometimes when it rained. Owen watched Caleb, too thin, work boots separating at the sole, a man trying very hard not to fall apart. The girl ran back holding a sunflower she had pulled loose. Caleb crouched down immediately. Soft voice, patient hands, helping her put it back. Owen saw two truths at once. A father who loved his daughter completely, and a man barely holding his life together. "She's beautiful," Owen said, meaning Lily. Megan didn't answer. She was still watching Caleb, watching the exhaustion, watching the effort, watching the version of life she had once stepped away from. Owen said something then, something small, something kind. something he would replay in his head 1,000 times later. At the bank, in the lawyer's office, in the courthouse parking lot. "He looks like he's struggling," Owen said gently. A pause. "Maybe you should check on him." Megan turned toward him, her eyes filled immediately. Gratitude, relief, permission. At the time, Owen thought it was love. Later, he would understand it was something else too. The relief of someone being allowed to do what they were already preparing to do. She messaged Caleb the following Tuesday. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay." He answered the next day, told her about losing his packaging plant job after layoffs, the custody pressure, the apartment with water-damaged ceilings, the landlord deadline. He didn't ask for money. He didn't need to. Megan sent $200 that Friday, for Lily. Caleb sent back a photo of Lily eating ice cream, chocolate everywhere. Huge smile. Megan saved the photo, in a folder she never named. The second transfer was $300, the third $500. By December, she had a system. By spring, she had a secret. By summer, the savings were thinning, and she needed more. She found a way. Driver's license photographed quietly from Owen's wallet. Signature practice. Backs of grocery receipts. Again, 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 until close enough felt safe enough. She told herself she would stop once Caleb stabilized. Caleb kept almost stabilizing. Custody reviews kept coming. Lily kept growing. The amounts kept growing with her. And Owen kept trusting. Kept not checking the savings. Kept falling asleep with Megan's feet tucked under his leg, believing ordinary life was something you kept simply by appreciating it enough. 18 months later, in a courthouse parking lot, Owen watched Megan's burgundy Civic disappear around the corner. He reached into his jacket pocket and found a folded paper he had carried since the final house walkthrough after she moved out. Not bank documents, not legal filings. A grocery receipt, blank on one side. On the back, his name, written over and over. Owen, Owen, Owen. Each attempt slightly different, each trying to become him. He sat in his truck a long time. Russ texted again, "You okay?" Owen typed back, "It's done." Then set the phone down, windows open, spring wind moving through Bradford pear trees. He thought about that farmer's market morning, how easily life had tilted, how quietly trust breaks. He still didn't know if telling Megan to reach out had been right. He still didn't know if filing the police report had been right. He didn't know if Megan was a thief or just a broken person trying to repair something money could never fix. He wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. The only thing he knew for certain was somewhere in Raleigh, a little girl had drawn a house with 3 people standing in front of it. A house that had never existed. And the stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere had cost $14 from a toy store on Hillsborough Street. Paid for with guilt and love. And Owen had learned those 2 things together could become the most expensive combination a person would ever encounter. A life spent inspecting hidden structural damage had not prepared him for that. If this story stayed with you, I'm curious what you think. Was Owen right to file the report? Or would you have protected Megan? Sometimes the people who hurt us most aren't enemies, just people trying to repay debts no one asked them to carry.